Please don't let them find me." The little girl said it so quietly that almost nobody heard her. Almost nobody. Except Bruce Lee. He was walking through a crowded Lowe's Angel Street when a small hand suddenly grabbed his. Bruce stopped. He looked down. A frightened little girl was standing beside him, breathing so fast she could barely speak. Her school uniform was dirty. One shoe was untied. Her cheeks were wet with tears. And she kept looking behind her. Again. And again. As if she expected someone to appear at any second. "Please." Her fingers tightened around Bruce's hand. "Don't let them find me." Bruce didn't ask who they were. Not yet. He simply looked into her eyes. Then he noticed something. Across the street stood 3 older boys. They weren't talking. They weren't laughing. They were watching the girl. One of them slowly smiled. Bruce's expression changed. The entire street seemed to disappear for a moment. There were cars, people, noise, music coming from a nearby store. But Bruce heard only the girl's breathing. He lowered himself until he was at her eye level. "What are you afraid of?" The girl stared at him. Her lips trembled. For a moment, it seemed like she was going to point at the boys. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "I'm not afraid of them." Bruce's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then what are you afraid of?" The girl looked toward the ground. A tear fell onto the sidewalk. "I'm afraid." She swallowed. "To go home." Bruce went completely silent. Because that answer changed everything. He had expected a story about bullies. He had expected a frightened child who needed someone to scare 3 boys away. But this was something else. Something much deeper. Something that had been happening long before she ever saw him. Bruce gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "What is your name?" "Emily." "Emily." He spoke softly. "Tell me what happened." She shook her head. "I can't." "Why?" "They told me not to." "Who?" Emily looked across the street. The 3 boys were still there. One of them raised his hand. Not a wave. A warning. Emily immediately looked away. Bruce saw it. He didn't need another explanation. "Have they been following you?" Emily nodded. "How long?" She hesitated. "Almost a month." Bruce's face remained calm. But his eyes became colder. "What did they do?" "At first," Emily wiped her tears. "At first they just laughed at me." Bruce waited. "Then they started taking my books." Another pause. "Then they started waiting outside school." Her voice became smaller. "They would stand in front of me so I couldn't go home." Bruce didn't interrupt. Emily continued. "They said if I told anyone." She stopped. Bruce waited. "What did they say?" Emily finally looked up. "They said they'd make me sorry." Bruce took a slow breath. "And you never told your mother?" Emily shook her head. "No." "Your teacher?" "No." "Your friends?" "No." "Why?" Emily's eyes filled with tears again. "Because they said if I told." Her voice broke. "They would come to my house." Bruce looked toward the boys. Then back at Emily. "Does your mother know you're afraid?" Emily shook her head. "She thinks everything is okay." Bruce was silent for a moment. Then he asked, "Why did you come to me?" Emily looked at him. She seemed embarrassed by the answer. "I saw your picture." Bruce frowned slightly. "My picture?" She nodded. "In my notebook." Then she whispered, "I drew you." Bruce looked at her. "A drawing?" Emily nodded. "It was stupid." "No." Bruce shook his head. "Nothing is stupid if it means something to you." Emily looked down. They saw it. Bruce waited. They laughed. Her voice became shaky. "They called you my little hero." Bruce said nothing. One of them took the page. Emily closed her eyes. "And stepped on your face." For the first time, Bruce's jaw tightened. But he didn't react the way Emily expected. He didn't storm across the street. He didn't threaten the boys. He didn't tell them they were going to regret what they had done. Instead, Bruce asked, "Where is your notebook?" Emily pointed toward a nearby bench. Bruce walked over. He picked it up. The cover was scratched. Several pages were bent. He opened it. Inside was a child's drawing. It wasn't perfect. The lines were uneven. The face wasn't quite right. But Bruce recognized himself immediately. Emily had drawn him standing in a martial arts stance. Bruce looked at the drawing for several seconds. Then he carefully closed the notebook. He walked back to her. "You drew this." Emily nodded. "I thought." She hesitated. "I thought you were someone who wasn't afraid of anything." Bruce looked at her. Then he said something Emily would remember for the rest of her life. "I'm afraid of many things." She looked surprised. "You are?" Bruce nodded. "Yes." "Then why don't you look scared?" "Because being afraid and being controlled by fear are two different things." Emily didn't fully understand. "Not yet." Bruce looked toward the three boys. Then back at her. "Tell me something." He pointed gently toward the street. "If I walk over there right now." Emily's eyes widened. Bruce continued, "And I make those boys afraid of me." She nodded slowly. "Would you be safe tomorrow?" Emily hesitated. "I don't know." Bruce shook his head. "Exactly." He crouched beside her again. "If I solve your problem with my fists today, what happens tomorrow?" Emily didn't answer. "Tomorrow," Bruce said quietly, "I won't be there." Those words hit her harder than anything else he had said. Because they were true. Bruce Lee could scare those boys. He could stop them. He could make sure they never came near her again. But he couldn't follow Emily home every afternoon. He couldn't stand beside her in every school hallway. He couldn't fight every person who might ever try to hurt her. So Bruce made a decision. He wouldn't teach her how to fight. He would teach her how to stand. The gym was only a few blocks away. It was small, old, nothing like the glamorous martial arts schools people imagined. The wooden floor had scratches. The heavy bags were worn. The walls carried the marks of years of training. Bruce brought Emily inside. She looked around nervously. "Are you going to teach me karate?" Bruce smiled. "No." "Kung fu?" "No." "Then what are we doing here?" Bruce pointed toward the floor. "Stand there." Emily walked over. Feet apart. She adjusted them. Shoulders down. She lowered them. "Look forward." Emily looked at him. "Not at me." She looked straight ahead. "Now breathe." She took a breath. Again. Another breath. Slower. Emily tried. But her chest was still rising too quickly. Bruce noticed. "Your body is telling you to run." Emily nodded. "I want to." "I know." He stepped closer. "But don't run yet." Emily looked confused. "Why?" Because I want you to discover something. What? Bruce pointed at her feet. You are still standing. Emily looked down. Her legs were trembling. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. But she was standing. Bruce nodded. That's where courage begins. Emily swallowed. I don't feel brave. Bruce smiled. Courage rarely feels like courage while you're doing it. He paused. Sometimes it just feels like being terrified. And taking one more step anyway. Emily breathed again. Slowly. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't trying to escape her fear. She was standing inside it. And learning that it couldn't immediately destroy her. Bruce walked around her. Look straight. She did. Breathe. She did. Again. She did. Then Bruce asked, what happens when you look at the ground? I don't know. You make yourself smaller. Emily looked at him. When you believe you're powerless, your body starts behaving like it. He pointed toward her shoulders. So lift them. She did. Head up. She raised her chin. Eyes forward. She looked ahead. Bruce nodded. Now you look different. Emily almost smiled. Almost. Then, bang. The gym door slammed open. Emily froze. Her face immediately lost its color. Bruce turned. 3 silhouettes stood in the doorway. The same 3 boys. The tallest one stepped inside. He looked at Emily. Then at Bruce. Then he laughed. So this is where you ran. Emily's breathing became faster. Her feet moved backward. Bruce noticed. He didn't look at the boys. He looked at Emily. Breathe. She tried. The boy walked closer. So you're Bruce Lee. Bruce didn't answer. The boy smiled. I heard you're supposed to be some kind of fighter. Still nothing. The boy looked at his friends. Then back at Bruce. Are you going to fight us? The room became completely silent. Everyone waited. Emily looked at Bruce. She expected him to step forward. She expected anger. She expected the man from her drawing. The hero. The fighter. The person who could make everything disappear with one move. Bruce finally spoke. No. The boy laughed. No. Bruce shook his head. No. Why? Bruce looked directly at him. Then calmly said, because this isn't my fight. The boy smiled. He thought Bruce was afraid. But Bruce wasn't finished. He turned toward Emily. This is hers. Emily stared at him. The boy laughed again. She's just a kid. Bruce nodded. Yes. Then he looked at Emily. And that's why she needs to learn something today. The boy stepped forward. What? Bruce's voice became almost impossibly calm. That she doesn't need to become like you. He paused. To stop being afraid of you. The smile disappeared from the boy's face. Emily's heart was pounding. Bruce stepped away from her. He didn't stand in front of her. He didn't shield her. He didn't fight for her. Instead, he left her standing alone. The exact thing Emily had been afraid of. Her hands trembled. The boys stared at her. One of them pointed at her notebook. Give it back. Emily looked down, then slowly lifted her eyes. Her lips trembled. Her heart screamed at her to run. But somewhere inside her, she remembered Bruce's voice. Being afraid and being controlled by fear are 2 different things. Emily took a breath. Then another. She stepped forward. The tallest boy raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" Emily's voice was barely audible. "Give me my notebook." He laughed. "Or what?" Emily's hands were still shaking. Her eyes were still wet. She was still scared. Terrified, in fact. But she didn't move backward. She looked directly at him and said, "Or I'm going to tell everyone." The room fell silent. The boy stopped smiling. Because for the first time, Emily wasn't asking someone else to save her. She was standing up for herself. Bruce watched from behind her, and he knew this was only the first battle. Because tomorrow morning, Emily would have to walk into the same school, down the same hallway, past the same boys, without Bruce beside her. And that was where the real test would begin. The next morning, Emily stood outside her school and stared at the entrance. For several seconds, she didn't move. Children were running through the doors. Parents were saying goodbye. Teachers were standing near the entrance, talking to one another. Everything looked normal. But to Emily, it felt like walking into a battlefield. She tightened her grip around the straps of her backpack. Inside that backpack was the same notebook. The same notebook the boys had thrown onto the ground. The same notebook with the drawing of Bruce Lee. She could still hear their laughter from yesterday. "Your little hero." Emily looked toward the school doors. Then she remembered Bruce's voice. "Breathe." She inhaled slowly, then exhaled. "Head up." She raised her chin. Eyes forward. She looked straight ahead and walked inside. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Emily began to think maybe they weren't there. Maybe they had forgotten. Maybe yesterday had been enough. Maybe. "Hey, Emily." She stopped. Her heart dropped. She knew that voice. Slowly she turned around. The three boys were standing at the end of the hallway. The tallest one was leaning against the wall. His arms were crossed. His two friends stood beside him. The hallway suddenly seemed much longer. Emily's fingers tightened around her backpack. The boy pushed himself away from the wall. "You really thought you could threaten us yesterday?" Emily said nothing. He walked closer. "Where's your bodyguard?" Emily looked around. Bruce wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. That was the point. The boy smiled. "What happened to your hero?" Emily's breathing became faster. She remembered the gym. The floor beneath her feet. Bruce telling her to stand. She planted her feet. The boy noticed. "You're not going to cry." Emily shook her head. "Good." He stepped closer. "Then give me the notebook." Emily held her backpack tighter. "No." The boy's expression changed. "No." Emily swallowed. "No." He reached for the backpack. Emily stepped backward, then stopped herself. She almost ran. Almost. But she remembered yesterday. You don't need to become like them to stop being afraid of them. The boy reached again. Emily moved away. "Don't touch me." Her voice shook, but it was loud enough for someone nearby to hear. A few students looked over. The boy immediately lowered his hand, then smiled. "You think anybody cares?" Emily looked around. Students were watching, but nobody moved. Nobody said anything. And that silence hurt more than the boy's words. Because Emily realized something. The boys weren't powerful because they were stronger. They were powerful because everyone else was afraid to speak. The hallway became quiet again. The tallest boy leaned closer. "You know what happens if you tell." Emily's eyes filled with tears. But before she could answer, a voice came from behind her. I think she already told you. Everyone turned. A boy from Emily's class was standing there. His name was Daniel. He was small, quiet, the kind of student who usually stayed out of trouble. The bully stared at him. What did you say? Daniel's voice trembled. I said. He swallowed. She told you to leave her alone. The bully laughed. You want to be next? Daniel immediately looked frightened. For a second, it seemed like he might back down. Then he looked at Emily. Emily looked at him. Neither of them said anything. But something happened. Something tiny. Something important. Daniel stayed. Then another student stepped forward. A girl named Sarah. I saw them take her books last week. The boys turned. Sarah's face went pale. But she continued. And I saw them yesterday. Another student spoke. I saw it too. Then another. And me. The hallway changed. Not because the boys became weaker. Because the silence around them began disappearing. The three boys looked at one another. For the first time, they didn't know what to say. The tallest boy tried to laugh. This is ridiculous. But nobody laughed with him. A teacher appeared at the end of the hallway. What is happening here? The students began talking. All at once, the teacher's expression changed. Everyone to the classroom. The boys started walking away. But before Emily turned around, she saw something she had never seen before. The tallest boy looked nervous. Not scared. Not yet. But nervous. Because he finally understood that Emily was no longer alone. That afternoon, Emily returned to the martial arts gym. She pushed open the door. Bruce was standing near the heavy bag. He was practicing slowly. Precise movements. No wasted motion. Emily walked inside. Bruce looked at her. You came back. Emily nodded. I went to school. Bruce smiled. I know. Emily stopped. How do you know? I can see it in your face. Emily smiled. I was scared. Bruce nodded. You were. I almost ran. But you didn't. Emily shook her head. No. Bruce turned toward the heavy bag. Then today was a good day. Emily looked confused. Even though I was scared. Especially because you were scared. He pointed toward the bag. Hit it. Emily looked at him. What? Hit it. She walked over. She raised her fist. Then stopped. I don't know how. Bruce smiled. Good. Good. You don't need to know how to hit something. He pointed toward the bag. You need to know why you're hitting it. Emily lowered her hand. Why? Bruce stepped closer. Anger. She shook her head. Revenge. No. Fear. Emily hesitated. No. Then what? Emily thought for a moment. Because I want to be strong. Bruce nodded. Better. He looked at her. But remember this. His voice became serious. Strength isn't about proving that you're stronger than someone else. Emily listened carefully. Real strength is knowing you don't have to prove anything. Those words stayed in the air. Then Bruce stepped back. Again. Emily raised her fist. This time she struck the bag. It moved slightly. Bruce didn't praise her. He simply said, Again. She hit it. Again. She hit it harder. Again. She continued. Soon, her breathing became heavy. Her hair stuck to her forehead. Her hands hurt. But she kept going. Not because she wanted to hurt someone. Because for the first time, she was discovering something inside herself. Discipline. Control. Confidence. Bruce watched quietly. Then Emily suddenly stopped. Bruce. Yes. Why were you so calm yesterday? Bruce looked at her. Because I knew they wanted me to lose control. Emily frowned. Why? Because when people are afraid of you, they sometimes try to make you angry. He paused. If they can control your emotions, they can control your actions. Emily nodded slowly. So you weren't scared? Bruce smiled. I was angry. Emily looked surprised. You were? Yes. Then why didn't you fight? Bruce looked at the floor for a moment. Then back at her. Because being strong means controlling what you can do. He paused. Not doing everything you can do. Emily stared at him. That sentence felt bigger than the gym. Bigger than the boys. Bigger than everything that had happened. Then Bruce said, one day you may meet someone stronger than you. Emily nodded. You may meet someone faster. Another nod. Someone louder. Another. Someone who wants to frighten you. Bruce stepped closer. And on that day, you must remember. He pointed toward her chest. They don't get to decide who you become. Emily looked down. Then smiled. For the first time, the smile reached her eyes. But outside the gym, someone was watching. A figure stood across the street. 3 boys. Again. The tallest one stared through the window. He watched Emily train. He watched Bruce talk to her. His expression was different now. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't confident. He looked angry. One of his friends whispered, "What are we going to do?" The boy didn't answer. Then he looked at the drawing inside Emily's notebook. The same drawing of Bruce Lee. He smiled. I know. The following morning, Emily arrived at school. Something felt different. Students looked at her differently. Some smiled. Some nodded. Daniel walked beside her. Sarah joined them. For the first time, Emily didn't walk alone. But then she noticed something. The 3 boys weren't in the hallway. They weren't near the classroom. They weren't outside. They were nowhere. Emily should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt uneasy. Because she remembered something Bruce had told her. When someone suddenly changes their behavior, don't assume the danger is gone. Emily looked around. Nothing. The school bell rang. Everyone went to class. The teacher began the lesson. For several minutes, everything was normal. Then Emily noticed her notebook was missing. Her heart stopped. She checked her backpack. Nothing. She searched under the desk. Nothing. Her hands began trembling. The teacher continued speaking. Emily looked toward the classroom door. It was open. Then she saw something on the floor. A single sheet of paper. She picked it up. Her face went white. It was her drawing. The drawing of Bruce Lee. But someone had written something across it. Not a name. Not a threat. Just 4 words. You should have stayed quiet. Emily couldn't breathe. The classroom suddenly felt too small. She looked toward the hallway. At the far end, one of the boys was standing there, watching her. He smiled, then disappeared around the corner. Emily stood up. Teacher. Her voice was barely audible. The teacher turned. "Yes, Emily." Emily held the drawing in her trembling hands. She wanted to speak. She wanted to tell everything. But before she could, the fire alarm suddenly screamed through the entire school. Students jumped from their seats. Teachers shouted. Children began running into the hallway. Emily froze. People pushed past her. The noise became overwhelming. And then she heard someone whisper directly behind her. "Come outside if you want your notebook back." Emily turned. Nobody was there. Her notebook was gone. And suddenly she understood. This wasn't over. The boys weren't trying to scare her anymore. They were trying to isolate her, to pull her away from everyone, to make her feel alone again. Emily looked at the crowded hallway. Hundreds of people were moving around her. Yet somehow, she felt completely alone. Then she remembered Bruce. "Tomorrow I won't be there." She closed her eyes, took a breath, and whispered to herself, "I'm not running." Then she opened her eyes and walked toward the exit. Outside, the schoolyard was chaos. Students gathered near the fence. Teachers counted children. Parents began arriving. Emily looked around. Then she saw them. The three boys were standing near the old storage building behind the school. One of them held her notebook. Emily's heart began pounding. She knew she shouldn't go. Every instinct told her to find an adult. And she would. But before she could move, the tallest boy opened the notebook. He tore out a page. Emily's face changed. "That took me hours." The boy smiled. "Then come get it." Emily stood frozen. The other boys stepped aside. Behind them was a narrow path leading toward the storage building. Dark, empty, away from the crowd. Emily remembered Bruce's words. "Fear doesn't get to make every decision for you." She took one step forward, then another. But this time, she wasn't walking toward them because she was trapped. She was walking toward them because she had made a choice. And she didn't know it yet. But someone else had already seen what was happening. Someone who was about to change everything. Because standing on the other side of the schoolyard was Bruce Lee. And he wasn't there to fight. He was there to see what Emily would do when nobody came to save her. Emily took another step toward the storage building. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. The three boys were waiting. One of them held her notebook in his hand. The other had torn pages scattered across the ground. And the tallest boy was smiling. But Emily didn't know what he didn't know. Bruce Lee was standing across the schoolyard, watching, not moving, not interfering, because this was the moment he had been preparing her for. Emily reached the narrow path. The tallest boy lifted the notebook. "You want this?" Emily nodded. "Then come closer." She took another step. The boy laughed. "You're not scared anymore." Emily stopped. She was terrified. Her palms were sweating. Her knees felt weak. She wanted to turn around. She wanted to run straight back into the crowd. But then she remembered the first thing Bruce had taught her. Stand. So she stood. The boy waved the notebook. "Where's your hero now?" Emily looked across the schoolyard. She saw Bruce. For 1 second their eyes met. He didn't wave. He didn't come toward her. He simply gave her the smallest nod. A silent message. "You know what to do." Emily turned back toward the boys. "He's not my hero." The boys looked surprised. Emily took a breath. He taught me something. What? Emily looked directly at the tallest boy. That I don't need someone to fight for me. The boy laughed. You think you're tough now? Emily shook her head. No. Her voice was quiet. But I'm not running. The boy's smile faded. He stepped closer. You should be afraid. Emily nodded. I am. The boy stopped. He clearly hadn't expected that answer. Emily continued. But I'm still standing here. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the boy threw the notebook onto the ground. Fine. He stepped toward her. Pick it up. Emily looked down. Her notebook was lying in the dirt. The pages were damaged. The drawing of Bruce was torn in half. She slowly walked toward it. She picked it up. And then she did something unexpected. She didn't scream. She didn't insult them. She didn't threaten them. She simply turned around and walked back toward the school. The three boys stared at her. Where are you going? Emily stopped. She turned. To tell the truth. The tallest boy's face changed. Don't. Emily took another step. You told me not to tell. Another step. I listened. Another. For weeks. She looked at the students gathering behind the teachers. But I'm done listening. The boys stood completely still. Emily walked toward the principal. Her hands were shaking. Her voice wasn't perfect. But she told everything. Every threat. Every hallway. Every stolen book. Every afternoon they waited for her. Every warning. Every time she had been afraid to go home. And then she showed them the notebook. The torn drawing. The threatening message. The principal's expression became serious. Teachers gathered around her. Other students began speaking too. One by one. They told the truth. And suddenly, what had seemed like Emily's private nightmare became something the entire school could see. The boys could no longer hide behind silence. They couldn't claim it never happened. There were witnesses. There were teachers. There were students who had finally found the courage to speak. The three boys were taken inside. Emily watched them disappear through the school doors. Then she looked down at her notebook. The drawing was ruined. She felt tears forming. Bruce walked toward her. He stopped beside her. He didn't say anything. Emily looked up. I did it. Bruce nodded. You did. I was scared. I know. I almost ran. I know. Emily wiped her eyes. Why didn't you come help me? Bruce looked at her. Because you already had what you needed. Emily frowned. I did. Bruce pointed gently toward her chest. You had yourself. Emily looked down. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she asked, Were you watching me? Bruce smiled. Yes. Why? Because sometimes the best way to help someone, he paused, is to let them discover that they can stand without you. Emily looked at the torn drawing. I thought you were going to save me. Bruce shook his head. I did. She looked confused. When? Bruce smiled. The moment you asked for help. Emily didn't understand. Bruce continued. But saving someone doesn't always mean removing every problem from their life. He looked toward the school. Sometimes it means giving them enough strength to face the problem. Emily stared at him. Then she smiled. A real smile. The kind Bruce hadn't seen before. Several weeks passed. Emily's life slowly began to change. The school became safer. Teachers paid attention. Students spoke up more often. The three boys were no longer allowed to approach her. But something even more important had changed. Emily no longer walked with her head down. She no longer constantly looked over her shoulder. She no longer believed that asking for help meant weakness. She understood something now. Asking for help was sometimes the bravest thing a person could do. And Bruce continued teaching her. Not how to become dangerous. How to become disciplined. Not how to hurt people. How to control herself. Not how to win fights. How to walk away from fights that didn't need to happen. One afternoon, Emily was practicing in the gym. She finished a movement and looked at Bruce. "Did I do it right?" Bruce nodded. "Better." Emily smiled. "That's all you ever say." Bruce laughed. "Because there's always another level." Emily thought for a moment. "Will I ever be as strong as you?" Bruce looked at her, then smiled. "I hope not." Emily laughed. "Why?" "Because I don't want you to become me." He pointed toward her. "I want you to become you." Emily smiled. Those words stayed with her. Years passed. Emily grew older. The little girl who once ran through a crowded, Los Angeles street, begging a stranger not to let the bullies find her, became a young woman. She never forgot Bruce. She never forgot the small gym. She never forgot the torn notebook. And most importantly, she never forgot the lesson. Strength wasn't about making people afraid of you. Strength was about refusing to let fear decide who you became. Then one afternoon, years later, Emily was walking past a school. She heard shouting. She stopped. A small child was standing near the fence, crying. Three older kids were surrounding him. One had taken his backpack. Another was laughing. The child looked around desperately. Students were walking past. Nobody stopped. Emily froze. For a moment, she was back on that Los Angeles street. She could almost feel the fear again. The same fear. The same helplessness. The same feeling of being completely alone. Then she heard a voice in her memory. "Stand." Emily walked toward them. "Give him his backpack." The older kids turned. One laughed. "Who are you?" Emily didn't answer. "Give it back." The boy stepped toward her. "Or what?" Emily looked at him. She remembered Bruce. She remembered everything he had taught her. And then she said, "Or we're going to talk to an adult." The boys laughed. "You're scared." Emily smiled. "Yes." The boy looked confused. Emily continued, "I am." She stepped closer. "But I'm still standing here." The boys looked at one another. Something in her voice made them hesitate. Then one of them dropped the backpack. The three boys walked away. The little child picked it up. His eyes were still wet. He looked at Emily. "Are you going to fight them?" Emily smiled. "No." She held out her hand. "I'm going to make sure you don't have to face them alone." The child took her hand. And as they walked away, Emily looked toward the school entrance. For a moment, she remembered a small martial arts gym. A quiet man. A torn drawing. And four words that had changed her life. "You don't have to run." Years later, Emily would tell people about Bruce Lee. But she never described him as the man who could defeat three bullies. She described him differently. She said he was the man who understood that sometimes a frightened child doesn't need someone to destroy the thing she's afraid of. Sometimes she needs someone to remind her that she has a voice, that she has choices, that she can ask for help, That fear can be present without being in control. And that real courage doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes courage looks like a little girl standing in a school hallway with trembling hands. Sometimes it looks like telling the truth after being silent for weeks. Sometimes it looks like asking for help. And sometimes it looks like reaching your hand toward someone else who is afraid. Emily never forgot the question Bruce asked her that first day. What are you afraid of? At the time, she thought the answer was simple. The boys, the threats, the walk home, the fear of being alone. But years later, she understood the real answer. She had been afraid that she was powerless. Bruce didn't tell her that she was invincible. He didn't tell her that nobody would ever hurt her again. He didn't promise that life would always be fair. He gave her something much more honest. He taught her that even when life becomes frightening, she could still choose what she did next. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. Because Bruce Lee didn't save Emily by throwing a single punch. He saved her by teaching her not to surrender her life to fear. And Emily carried that lesson for the rest of her life. Until one day, she passed it on to someone else. A frightened child, a trembling hand, a silent plea for help. And this time, Emily was the person who stopped. She was the person who listened. She was the person who reached out her hand. Not because she was fearless, but because she finally understood what Bruce had tried to teach her. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that fear doesn't get the final word. And sometimes, the strongest person in the room isn't the one who throws the hardest punch. It's the one who gives someone else the courage to stand